I'm Amanda Collins, 32 years old, and 3 years back, I bought my first property, a simple yet charming two-bedroom house that symbolized everything I'd strived for. Last Sunday, I invited my parents over for dinner to celebrate my job promotion. I never imagined my father would rise after dessert, his expression cold and stern, and demand my house keys. "This home is now part of the family estate," he announced as my mother nodded. Shocked and heartbroken, I placed the keys on the table and walked away silently. The next morning, when the mortgage lender called, everything took a dramatic turn. Before I reveal how I uncovered my parents' hidden scheme, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and if you've ever faced betrayal from loved ones, hit that like button and subscribe to find out what I did next. Growing up in the Collins home meant living under strict regulations. My parents, Richard and Margaret Collins, exercised authority over nearly every detail of my life, from who I could befriend to what I could wear. They called it protection. But as I matured, I saw it for what it really was: control. Even with their controlling ways, I believed they cared and wished for me success. I simply thought their approach was outdated and too intense. After finishing high school, I battled for my freedom. They pushed for me to attend community college and live at home, but I secretly applied for scholarships. When I received a full academic award from State University, they couldn't argue against free tuition, though their disappointment was obvious. Those 4 years changed everything. I found my talent in finance and discovered my drive to help people make smart money decisions. My journey in financial consulting started with a junior role at Richardson Financial Group. I worked insane hours, volunteered for extra tasks, and earned certificate after certificate. By the time I turned 29, I had tripled my income and saved up enough to afford a down payment on a place of my own. My parents wanted me to buy a condo nearby, or better yet, build an extension on their house. When I purchased a craftsman-style home across town instead, they barely hid their unhappiness. "This house is way too big for one person," my dad said at the housewarming. "You're throwing money on useless space," my mom commented, refusing to compliment the hardwood floors I had restored by hand. That home meant the world to me: freedom, pride, stability. I'd spent weekends painting rooms, installing fans, and designing a home office, where I often stayed up late working. The backyard garden turned into my peaceful escape. The kitchen, my place of creativity. Every inch held meaning. It wasn't just real estate, it was the living proof of breaking cycles of generational dependence. Not long ago, I was promoted to senior consultant, with a notable pay bump and the opportunity to create my own client list. After 5 years of watching senior team members take vacations while I covered for them, I was finally leveling up. That dinner was supposed to celebrate the moment. In hindsight, I should have seen the clues. My dad's questions about my loan had grown oddly specific. Which bank holds the mortgage? Is it a 15 or 30-year plan? Did you refinance with the current low interest rates? Back then, I assumed he was either chatting casually or thinking of refinancing their own place. My mom's behavior also began shifting. She asked if she could store heirlooms at my home, saying their attic had gotten damp. "These belong in the family," she'd say while placing vintage frames on my mantel, treating my home like their own. I'd always been generous to them. When they mentioned being behind on taxes, I mailed money. When their heating system failed last winter, I paid half the replacement fee. I never expected repayment. They were my parents, after all. My brother Ryan, 2 years younger, always stood firmly in their corner. A contractor who still lived above their garage, he enjoyed a mutually beneficial arrangement. They gave him cheap rent, he helped with household maintenance, and constantly validated their views. Unlike me, Ryan never questioned them or pushed back. In family conflicts, he always took their side, reminding me of their sacrifices. My best friend Stephanie warned me more than once. "They don't want you to outshine them," she told me when they downplayed my promotion. "They preach about family bonds, but really they want to keep you dependent." I brushed off her comments, calling them too extreme. I believed, despite everything, they wanted the best for me. "Trust me," I told her. "They're just traditional. They'll see the truth when they realize how far I've come." Stephanie had only sighed. "I hope so. But be cautious. They thrive on power. and you've let them hold it for too long. I should have paid more attention to her advice. I should have asked why my mom needed a backup key for emergencies. I should have been suspicious when my dad wanted to review my insurance, just to make sure you're not overpaying. The warning signs were there, but I clung to the idea that your family never truly betrays you. That belief cost me. I spent the entire day preparing for that Sunday dinner. I marinated steak, my dad's favorite, and made mashed potatoes with garlic and butter just the way my mom liked them, with rosemary. I even made apple pie from scratch using my grandmother's recipe. The table was set with the good china I rarely touched. Candles were lit, and a fancy bottle of Cabernet was breathing on the kitchen counter. That meal meant more than celebration. It was proof I had made it. I hoped they'd finally see me not as a child, but as an independent, successful woman. At 5 p.m., the doorbell rang. I smoothed my dress, took a deep breath, and opened the door with a wide smile. That smile faded fast when I saw not only my parents, but Ryan standing beside them. "Hope you don't mind," Mom said, stepping inside, like she owned the place. "Ryan had no plans tonight, so we brought him." "Of course not," I lied, quickly trying to figure out if I had enough food for everyone. "The more, the better." Dad handed me a bottle of cheap wine, the kind people grab near the checkout. "Got your favorite," he said, although it never had been. During appetizers, the talk stayed surface level. Mom admired my new curtains, asking their price and where I'd bought them. Dad studied the new kitchen backsplash, pointing out a tiny spot with uneven grout. Ryan barely said anything, glued to his phone and grinning at incoming texts. While serving dinner, I decided to share my news. "I wanted to tell you all in person why I invited you over," I said, refilling their glasses. "I've been promoted to senior consultant at Richardson. It comes with a raise, my own office, and a chance to build my own clients." The silence after was a second too long. Finally, my mom spoke. "That's nice, dear. But will your hours increase?" "That doesn't sound very healthy." Dad chewed slowly before asking, "And what's the raise amount?" When I told him, his brow lifted and he exchanged a quick glance with Mom. "Well, good for you," he said. "They finally noticed your efforts." Ryan gave a faint snort. "Must be nice, getting paid big bucks just for sitting in an office." I swallowed the familiar knot of hurt, but stayed calm. "I'm really excited about this step. I worked hard to get here." "You've always been career-focused," Mom replied, as if it were something negative. The dinner went on with forced talk. They barely asked about my job, but spent 15 minutes raving about Ryan's recent bathroom project. I caught Dad checking his watch often. As I served dessert, pie, and coffee, he sat upright, his tone suddenly formal. "Amanda," he said, "your mom and I have been discussing your living situation." "My situation?" I repeated, unsure what he meant. He nodded, gently putting down his fork. "This home is just too much for one person. Honestly, it should benefit all of us." Mid-sip, I froze. "What are you saying?" "We've thought it through," Mom jumped in. "As your parents, we invested in you. Your education, your life, all your success. It's the fruit of our work." Ryan grinned, his approval clear. "So this house," Dad continued, "is basically a result of our investment. And we've decided it's time we acknowledge that." "What does that mean?" I asked, my voice almost gone. Dad's eyes turned cold. "It means this house is the family's now. Your mom and I will move in. Ryan will start renovations." "Right away," Ryan leaned forward. "First thing, break down the wall between the dining room and kitchen. We need open space. Mom's wanted it for years." I looked from one to the next, waiting for the joke. But no one laughed. Their faces were serious. Hopeful even. "This is my house," I said softly. "I bought it. My name is on the title and mortgage." Dad waved it off. "We're family. What's yours is ours. That's how this works." "No," I replied, louder this time. "That's not how any of this works. I bought this place. I make the payments. It belongs to me." Mom's face took on that long-practiced look of disappointment. After all we've given you, this is your response? Selfishness. Selfish? I repeated, shocked. How is owning what's mine selfish? Leave your keys and go, Dad snapped. This house is for the family now. Mom nodded, her mouth drawn in a thin, stern line. You can't be serious, I whispered. We are, Dad replied. You have 1 week to move your personal things. Ryan will make sure you don't take anything that belongs here. I felt like I was in a dream. No, a nightmare. These people, my family, were calmly trying to take my home, as if it was theirs by right. I couldn't speak. Then Dad held out his hand. Keys, now. Something inside me turned cold and quiet. Without a word, I opened my purse, pulled out my keys, placed them on the table, and stood up. I only took my phone, wallet, and car keys. You'll regret this, Dad shouted as I left. I didn't look back. I closed the door, got into my car, and drove across town to Stephanie's place. Tears streamed down my face the entire drive. They've lost it, Stephanie said when I told her everything. You need a lawyer, first thing tomorrow. They're my parents, I replied, my voice shaky. This must be some mistake. Stephanie grabbed my arms. Amanda, listen. They just tried to steal your home. That's not confusion. That's criminal. That night, I lay awake on Stephanie's couch, replaying the dinner over and over. Did I ever suggest this house was a group effort? Did I miss signs in our dynamic that explained their behavior? No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't find any justification. But the truth would become painfully clear the next day with one phone call. I woke up on the couch, drained and groggy. For a few precious seconds, I didn't remember why I was there. But then, it all hit me again. My dad's cold stare, Mom's silent approval, Ryan's smug remodeling plans for my house. My house. Stephanie had left a note telling me to eat and call a lawyer. I was browsing real estate attorneys when the phone rang. Unknown caller. Hello, this is Amanda Collins. I answered, my voice hoarse. Miss Collins, this is David Herrera from Midwest Mortgage Services, a polished voice said. We've detected some irregular activity on your mortgage file. My stomach tightened. What sort of activity? Someone tried to alter your contact details yesterday. They also asked about adding co-borrowers to the account. Our system flagged it because the request wasn't made through our secure platform. Yesterday, while I was cooking dinner, they were trying to seize control of my mortgage. The individuals claim to be joint owners, David continued, but our system lists you as the only borrower and legal owner. We wanted to confirm with you. That's correct, I said, thoughts racing. I'm the only owner. Who requested the change? A Richard and Margaret Collins. They used your details, including your social security number. That's why it came to my desk. They had my SSN. Of course, they had my old paperwork. Birth certificate, school records, everything. Miss Collins, do you authorize them to access your mortgage or make changes? Absolutely not, I said. They have no right to my home or my loan. Understood. We'll add extra security to your account. I also suggest reporting this. If someone's trying to access your financial data without permission, it's serious. I hung up. I remained frozen on Stephanie's sofa, the truth finally sinking in. This wasn't a miscommunication or some strange misunderstanding. My parents had deliberately tried to hijack my mortgage behind my back. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the chest. I dialed the local non-emergency police line and calmly described what had happened. The officer asked, "Do your parents still have keys to your house?" I hesitated, then admitted, "Yes, I left them there last night when they told me to get out." "You might want to meet officers at your property," he advised, "in case there's any unlawful entry. We can log it as a possible break-in or unauthorized stay." 2 hours later, I stood on my front step with 2 officers beside me, using the spare car key from Stephanie to get the hidden house key I'd tucked in a magnetic holder under the fender. My hands shook as I turned the lock. The place was quiet, but their presence still lingered. The dinner plate sat untouched, food dried and clinging to porcelain. My house keys, gone. I scoured the rooms quickly. Nothing major looked out of place, but a few drawers in my office were partially open. I'm going to document that someone's been inside and possibly accessed sensitive materials, Officer Rodriguez said, jotting things down. It would be smart to change all your locks today. She was just handing over her contact card when my phone rang again. It was a local law firm. Is this Amanda Collins? This is Barbara Mitchell with Mitchell Legal Services. Stephanie mentioned your situation. She asked me to get in touch about a property issue. An hour later, I sat across from Barbara in her office, surrounded by legal volumes and diplomas. She looked to be in her 50s, with sharp features and a crisp, no-nonsense air that was oddly comforting. Let me make sure I have this right, she said, after I explained. Your parents demanded your house keys, claimed the property, belonged to the family, and tried to alter your mortgage details without your consent? Yes, I said, still stunned just hearing it aloud. And you've verified you're the sole name on everything? No joint ownership? No help with the down payment? None. I paid the full down payment from my own savings. Every mortgage installment has come from my bank for the past 3 years. Barbara nodded and started taking notes. With your permission, I'd like to initiate a full background check on your parents. If they've attempted similar fraud in the past, it could bolster your case. I hesitated, then nodded. Within half an hour, her investigator compiled a sobering report. They're in serious financial trouble, Barbara explained, scanning the documents. 3 credit cards in collections, a tax lien from 2 years ago, and it looks like they've recently taken out a second mortgage on their own home. They're deeply underwater. It hit me then. They weren't just overreaching parents. They were drowning in debt. My recent raise and promotion had made me a target. They saw my home as a solution to their crisis. What's even more troubling, Barbara continued, is this isn't the first time they've done something like this. 7 years ago, your maternal grandmother filed a complaint alleging your parents tried to transfer her retirement funds into their names. It was withdrawn later, but we found the original paperwork. My heart sank. My grandmother had always seemed a little emotionally distant, but never unkind. She'd passed 5 years earlier, and my parents had handled her estate. Now I wondered what they'd really done behind the scenes. I broke down right there in Barbara's office, crushed by the weight of betrayal. Not only had they tried to steal from me, they'd done this before. How could I have missed the signs? I whispered. I know this is a lot, Barbara said gently, handing me tissues. But we need to act fast. First, we'll send a cease and desist letter. Then file for a temporary restraining order to keep them off your property while this is investigated. While signing the documents, my phone buzzed. Text from my brother. You're blowing this way out of proportion. Mom and Dad were just trying to help. Families support each other. You've always been selfish. Dad says if you bring lawyers into this, you're not welcome at family holidays anymore. I showed the messages to Barbara, who added them to her folder. Classic emotional manipulation, she said. They're making you feel guilty for defending your own legal rights. When I exited the firm, Stephanie was waiting curbside. You're staying at my place until this is resolved, she said flatly. I don't want to be a burden. I murmured. You're not a burden. You're finally being cared for, not used. That night, after replacing all my locks and activating credit monitoring alerts, my phone rang again. It was Martin, my boss. Amanda. I heard you're going through something with your family, he said, concerned. How did you find out? I asked, alarmed. Your father called the office asking for employment verification, said it was, for some kind of financial consolidation. When we said we needed signed consent, he got angry. I was mortified. My private family issues had now breached my professional life. Take whatever time you need, Martin said kindly. Your position and promotion are secure. I'll also notify security to prevent unauthorized visitors. After we hung up, I checked my voicemail. One new message from my father. You're making a terrible mistake, Amanda. We're your family. We're entitled to what's yours. If you fight us, you'll regret it. I sent the message to Barbara. She replied that it would help support the restraining order. Despite how exhausted I felt, sleep never came. I lay in Stephanie's spare room, replaying years of conversations, wondering if my parents had ever loved me unconditionally or if I'd always just been an asset. The pain was indescribable. By morning, I had decided I wasn't just going to protect myself, I was going to make sure they couldn't do this to anyone else. I had to take a stand. 2 days after that awful dinner, I returned to my home with a police officer and locksmith in tow. Barbara had instructed me to have official witnesses and full documentation. As we pulled into my driveway, my stomach twisted. My parents' car, Ryan's truck, parked like they belonged there. "Those are their vehicles," I told Officer Wilson. "They shouldn't be here." "Stay in the car," he instructed. "I'll handle it." From my seat, I watched him knock and identify himself. My father opened the door, not surprised, just annoyed. After a brief exchange, Wilson waved for me to approach. Walking up the sidewalk felt strange, like I was heading toward someone else's house. I reached the porch and looked past my father into my own living room, where my mom and Ryan were shifting furniture. They'd even moved my couch to the opposite wall. My artwork was off the walls. "Miss Collins says you're on this property without permission," Officer Wilson said evenly. "Can you provide legal documents proving you have a right to be here?" "We're her parents," my father huffed. "This house belongs to the family." "Are your names on the deed or mortgage?" "We don't need that. We supported her. We helped her succeed. That house is because of us." "That's not how property ownership works," the officer replied. "Unless your name is legally on it, you can't enter without consent." My mother stepped forward, tearful. "Amanda, how could you bring police into this? We raised you better." I swallowed hard. "You raised me better than to steal from my own child." Ryan appeared holding a box, my personal paperwork. "This is absurd," he snapped. "We're just organizing things." "By taking my private documents?" I said. "Put that down, Ryan." "Miss Collins," Officer Wilson asked, "would you like these individuals removed?" "Yes," I answered clearly, ignoring my mother's shocked inhale. "And I want to see what else they've taken." What followed was horrible. Watching them escorted out, hearing my dad mutter about disloyalty, my mother switch between sobbing and glaring, Ryan sneering like I'd betrayed them. Once they were gone, I did a full search. Gone my grandmother's old jewelry box, my social security card, my birth certificate, several years' worth of tax forms, and strangely, framed family pictures. In my office, my computer had been accessed. No way to tell what they'd done yet. "I need to file a theft report," I told Officer Wilson, who nodded kindly. "You should also seriously consider a restraining order. These things can escalate, and they did, fast." In the following days, I was inundated with accusatory texts from family I hadn't spoken to in years. "How could you evict your own parents? They sacrificed everything for you, and this is your payback?" Apparently, my father had spun a tale about how they'd invested in the house, only for me to turn on them. No mention of break-ins or fraud. Even worse, they posted on social media, painting themselves as heartbroken victims. They tagged mutual friends, extended relatives. The public shaming stung. Old classmates commented. Distant cousins expressed disappointment. Stephanie helped me write a calm, factual message I could send privately. "I'm sorry, but the information you received is not accurate. My parents tried to assert rights over the house I fully bought on my own. This has turned into a legal issue, and I won't be commenting on it anymore. Some relatives backed away immediately, but a few doubled down saying family conflicts should be kept behind closed doors and I should settle things without getting lawyers involved." Few seemed interested in what had actually happened. At the same time, my lawyer received a formal letter from legal counsel representing my parents claiming they had a spoken agreement that my home was intended as a shared family investment and asking for mediation. Barbara reassured me that nothing in their claim held legal weight, but the pressure was wearing me down. I couldn't eat. I barely slept. Getting through the workday was an effort in holding it together on the outside while breaking down internally. I jumped at every ping on my phone, expecting the next blow from my relatives one night after work. I came home to find my porch light shattered, and a note wedged into the doorframe reading "Family protects its own." One way or another, the not-so-subtle message took me straight to Barbara's office the following morning. She instantly submitted for an emergency protective order, Against both my parents and brother, this crosses the line, she told me while reviewing the police file I'd created about the note. Their actions are getting more and more alarming, even though I understood the legal need to create distance apart. Of me still hesitated to sever ties entirely with them. After all, they were still the people who'd raised me, who came to every school milestone, who were present in every Christmas photo and birthday video. How could I walk away from that part of my life? I know this is painful, Barbara said softly, seeing the conflict in my face, but think of it like this. If these weren't your parents, but instead coworkers or neighbors treating you like this, would you pause before defending yourself? That night, I lay awake in my newly locked down house with a new alarm system and cameras covering every corner, feeling more isolated than I'd ever been, and at around 3 a.m., I finally admitted the truth. I hadn't wanted to face the parents I thought I had, imperfect but loving, weren't real. The people trying to rob me of my home were showing me their true selves. Maybe this had always been who they were recognizing. That hurt, but also gave me a strange clarity. I could grieve the fantasy of the family I thought I belonged to, while doing what I needed to stay safe from the one I actually had. The next day, I reached out to a trauma-informed therapist who specialized in toxic family dynamics and booked a session. If I was going to survive this betrayal emotionally, I needed professional help. As I walked out the door for work, my credit alert app sent a notification someone had tried to open a credit account. In my name, the red flag popped because the mailing address listed was my parents' house. I sent the alert to Barbara, who added it to our evidence packet. This is identity fraud, she told me. It significantly boosts the strength of our case, too. Days after that, I received a court summons for the protective order hearing. Barbara explained what would happen at court and warned me that my parents would likely show up playing the part of loving and heartbroken family wrongfully accused. The judge will look at documentation, not sentiment, she reminded me. And we've got more than enough records showing serious boundary violations and potentially illegal conduct the night before court. I could hardly think clearly. Anxiety was taking over. The idea of sitting in front of a judge and admitting what my family had done made me nauseous. But underneath the fear, something new was forming. Resolve. I had done nothing wrong. I had earned everything I had, and I had every right to defend myself. No matter how emotionally gutting it might be, I wasn't going to be intimidated. The county courthouse was large and cold, with towering walls and a hollow sound to every footstep. I showed up early with Barbara, wearing a simple dark blue suit and gripping a binder of organized materials. My hands shook as I waited. Barbara leaned close and whispered, "Stay focused. Don't let them bait you or throw you off balance." When my parents and brother walked in with their lawyer, they looked carefully composed. My dad was in an old business suit, trying to appear dignified. My mom looked pale and shaken, holding onto her handbag like it was the only stable thing in her world. Ryan flanked them with arms crossed, silently playing the protective sibling. They didn't speak to me. My mom's eyes flicked toward mine for a second before looking away. Their lawyer, James Westfield, stepped up to Barbara with an offer before we even entered the courtroom. "My clients are prepared to withdraw everything. If Ms. Collins agrees to family mediation and allows her parents fair access to the residence they assisted in financing." Barbara didn't flinch. Her reply was razor sharp. "Your clients tried to falsify mortgage records, accessed the home without permission, stole personal records, and attempted identity fraud. This is not a misunderstanding, and we're moving ahead with legal protection." Once our case was called, we stepped into the courtroom. Judge Elena Martinez, an older woman with alert eyes, quietly read over our file before she addressed the room. "I understand we're dealing with a dispute over a family home." Before she could say more, Westfield smoothly interrupted. "This is all a result of miscommunication. Your Honor, the Collins family has always treated assets as communal and worked together for shared financial benefit." Barbara began her presentation. Methodically, first came the lender's statement proving unauthorized tampering with account access. Next, the report from the police when my family was found inside my house, followed by my inventory of missing items, the threatening note, and the alert about the credit account application. Finally, she added, "We've also uncovered evidence that Mr. and Mrs. Collins tried a similar financial stunt involving Ms. Collins' maternal grandmother. In the past, their attorney objected, calling that irrelevant, and pointing out that incident was resolved privately when it was my family's turn to speak. They put on a dramatic show that was hard to listen to. We just wanted to support our daughter," my mother said while dabbing at her cheek. "She's never been responsible with money, and we worried she'd get in over her head." My dad talked. about how they loaned me money for sports fees in high school and bought me my first laptop in college. They tried to frame everything as concern, as if trying to transfer a house deed behind my back was an act of love. The judge listened without much expression after closing statements. Judge Martinez paused, then spoke. I'm granting the temporary restraining order effective immediately due to credible threats, emotional manipulation, and attempted financial fraud, Mr. And Mrs. Collins, as well as their son Ryan, are ordered to have no contact with Ms. Collins and stay a minimum of 300 feet from her residence and workplace. I couldn't tell what I felt as we left the courtroom. Not triumph, just a kind of stillness. Like I'd passed through something I could never return from. My family didn't look at me as I left. They seemed too focused on themselves, too stunned by the outcome. Barbara walked me to my car. You did exactly what you needed to. She said you stood up for yourself, no matter how painful it was. I didn't reply, just nodded, because deep down I knew she was right. And also that this was just the beginning. We believed we were safeguarding a shared family asset. What shared asset? Judge Martinez inquired sharply. Did you contribute any funds toward buying this house? Not directly, my father confessed, but we raised her, educated her, shaped who she is. Everything she's accomplished stems from our sacrifices. The judge's face stayed unreadable, but her questions grew more pointed regarding money transfers, official paperwork, and event timelines. Each response made their version fall apart further when Ryan took the stand and claimed he only assisted with paperwork. The judge questioned him about the box he held during the police visit. Those were family files. He insisted income records showing only Ms. Collins' details are family documents, the judge asked. Visibly doubtful by the session's end, Judge Martinez had seen enough. She approved a temporary restraining order barring my parents and Ryan from coming within 500 feet of either my house or job site for a duration of 90 days, citing the evidence. She concluded this case shows troubling signs of attempted financial domination and potentially deceptive conduct. Miss Collins has every right to safeguard property that is legally hers. As we exited the courtroom, my mother cried out, "Amanda, please, we're still your family." I said nothing. Barbara's arm steadying mine while the ruling felt like a win. It actually opened a new front in the conflict. News of the order tore through. Our extended family, like a spark through dry grass sides, were taken fast, with most rallying around my parents, calling my legal action a betrayal of blood ties. But to my shock, my mother's sister, Aunt Jessica, reached out with unexpected support. I've been hoping someone would finally stand up to them, she told me over coffee. They pulled something like this with your grandma. Tried to convince her she couldn't handle her money and nearly took control of everything. I stepped in, and they cut me off ever since. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, stunned. Would you have believed me? She replied softly. We cling to the best image of our parents to survive. Jessica's support became a rare comfort amidst the backlash, but Ryan's actions began raising new alarms. Even with the restraining order, he started showing up near my home. Frequently, neighbors mentioned his truck parked nearby again and again. He kept his distance, careful not to break the rules, but the intimidation was clear. At the same time, strange notes began turning up in my mailbox. Phrases like "families don't abandon their own" and "blood remains strongest," and most chilling of all, "lawyers can't shield you forever." I passed each one to the police, but without evidence. Of who left them, little could be done. The tension began to erode my work. Despite Martin's patience, I made odd mistakes, skipped crucial details in presentations, missed scheduled meetings. The job I'd poured myself into was suddenly on thin ice. Barbara recommended more protections. Your family might escalate now that legal routes failed. She explained often, this worsens before it stops. I invested in a top-tier surveillance system, full coverage around the house. I also changed all contact info and set up filters to catch anything from their accounts. I even started varying my daily routines and inspecting my car. Precautions that felt paranoid, but helped a little less than a month after the ruling. I discovered an attempted hack on my bank accounts, which triggered a lockout. The IP traced back to my parents' provider. Barbara included this in our growing evidence and pushed for more charges. They're ignoring the restraining order's purpose, even if not the exact wording. She said we need to prove these choices have real repercussions. The final blow came when a client quietly asked about a disturbing email, apparently from a family member, alleging I was unstable and financially reckless. Multiple clients, and even Martin, received similar emails. Thankfully, Martin saw through it instantly and called me. This crosses both personal and professional lines, he said, forwarding it to me. Our legal department will pursue defamation against whoever did this armed with the latest proof Barbara filed for a permanent order, plus charges of defamation, harassment, and attempted fraud. The new court date was set this time. I approached it less fearful and more resolved. What my parents were doing now went far beyond controlling assets. They were actively sabotaging my life and career. Judge Martinez recognized us and reviewed the material with growing concern. This pattern of escalation is alarming. She said what started as a property issue now looks like a deliberate effort to intimidate and damage Mr. Collins's emotional rebuttals didn't stand a chance next to emails, clearly linked to their device. My mother's crying seemed rehearsed, and even their attorney appeared increasingly uneasy. Your Honor, my father interrupted during Barbara's speech, this has all gotten out of hand. We're only trying to support our daughter, who's clearly confused. Judge Martinez gave him a piercing look. Mr. Collins, please let counsel do the talking. You are not helping. When Ryan was called to explain why he'd been seen near my house, his excuse was weak and revealing. I was just checking the place, making sure it was okay, despite a legal order saying, you couldn't go near it. The judge asked. Family duty overrides paperwork. Ryan replied, dropping the mask. That is not how legality functions. Mr. Collins, said the judge sternly. She granted a permanent restraining order and issued a stern warning any further breaches would be criminally charged. This court takes harassment and financial manipulation seriously. She emphasized no family relationship, permits harming another person legally or otherwise, as the decision was finalized. Ryan abruptly stood up. This is total crap. He shouted, she's abandoned us. She owes us. Judge Martinez told the bailiffs to restrain him. He continued yelling contempt of court. She declared, Ryan will spend the night in jail to reflect on conduct. Watching my brother get cuffed wasn't satisfying. It was heartbreaking. How did things get here? The family I once loved had turned into strangers, warped by greed. Barbara touched my shoulder softly. It's never easy when family goes against you, but you've shown real courage. I didn't feel brave. I felt drained, hollowed out by months of tension and heartbreak. The legal chapter might be closed, but the emotional one remained wide open. 3 months after the permanent order, my life was slowly repairing. The safety measures became habit. The anxiety faded, work stabilized, and I started enjoying my promotion again. Then came a text from a number I didn't recognize. Let's talk coffee at Sterling's tomorrow. Dad! My pulse jumped as I forwarded the text to Barbara, who confirmed it was technically a restraining order breach, but said we should let it go unless it became frequent. Sometimes it's wiser to preserve your mental bandwidth, she advised. They may just be testing how far they can push. A week passed before a formal letter came via their lawyer suggesting a neutral site family reconciliation meeting with all attorneys present. After consulting with Dr. Levine, my therapist, I gave cautious consent. You've done immense work addressing the trauma, she noted. This could bring closure. No matter the result, the meeting was held in a private restaurant room. Barbara came with me while my parents arrived, with Patricia Wong, their new lawyer, who focused on family mediation. My parents looked different, smaller, somehow no longer looming. My dad seemed thinner, and Mom's hair had more gray. They sat across the table, hands folded like nervous school kids. Thank you for coming. My dad began formally. We've taken time to reflect on our choices. What followed wasn't an apology. They spoke of misunderstandings and missteps, but never fully owned up to the attempted theft or harassment. We only wanted to do what's best for all of us, said my mother. Maybe we went about it the wrong way. Wrong way, I repeated, holding back emotion. You tried to steal my home, took my private papers, faked my identity, and smeared my career. That's not a wrong way, that's criminal. My father's jaw tensed. We admitted we messed up. What else do you want? Real accountability, I said. Acknowledge what happened and why. And assure me it won't happen again to me or anyone else. Their lawyer advised us to focus on progress instead of past issues. Barbara countered that accountability was critical for any honest reconciliation. As the talk wore on, it was obvious. They wanted the order removed and access to my life restored, but they refused to own up to the real damage they caused. They claimed they were misunderstood helpers rather than controlling manipulators. We're still your parents, my mother sobbed. Family forgives. Forgiveness needs truth, I answered, and it doesn't automatically rebuild trust. When Ryan came up, they said he was angry but trying to cope. They suggested therapy for all 4 of us as a way forward. I gave their offer serious thought before replying, I'm willing to talk further, but under strict conditions. I said first, a full admission of everything that happened. No sugarcoating or dodging. Second, individual counseling for each of you before group sessions. And third, no talk of my property or finances ever again. Those are non-negotiable. My dad's face darkened. So now you make the rules for our relationship. I set boundaries. I told him, you choose. If you can respect them. The meeting ended, unresolved. My parents would consider my conditions, but their posture said they found them unfair. As Barbara and I walked out, she gave me an approving nod. You held firm and calm. The next move is theirs 2 days later. A handwritten letter from Mom arrived, not via their lawyer, but personally. No apology was offered, just a line saying if I couldn't forgive and forget on their terms, then maybe we should pause contact. It ended with, when you're ready to return to the family without all this legal nonsense, you know where to reach us. Their point was clear. They would not take real responsibility or honor my boundaries in their eyes. I was the one at fault, oddly, instead of crushing me. The letter gave clarity, and a strange piece. I brought it to therapy, where Dr. Levine helped me unpack it. They're showing their true selves, she said. They want family on their terms. Your compliance? No limits. What do I do now? I asked. They're still my parents. Then you choose what kind of tie is healthy for you. If any family can be blood, or it can be trust and support. Sometimes they overlap and sometimes not. In the weeks after I focused on my future, not repairing what they had no wish to fix, I dove back into work with new clarity and purpose. I reached out to old friends I'd distanced during the storm. I even joined a group for estranged adults and found shared stories. My home once. My pride-turned-battlefield needed reclaiming. I finally started the long-delayed kitchen renovation, painted rooms, moved furniture, replaced art they had tried to take with new pieces that spoke to who I was. Each update helped erase memories of them trespassing, claiming what wasn't theirs. I installed a modern smart home system with alerts covering all entry points. The fear of seeing notes or Ryan's truck gradually eased as time passed without new incidents. Half a year after court ended, I got an unexpected promotion. Martin brought me into his office personally. The grace you showed through all that family chaos impressed leadership, he told me. You displayed control and grit through pressure. That's what we look for in a director of client services. The irony was sharp. The same family mess meant to crush me helped elevate me in trying to trap me. They pushed me further into self-reliance as holidays neared, always tough for those estranged from kin. Stephanie and others invited me into their gatherings. Chosen family is still family. Stephanie said sometimes it's the only healthy kind. The first Thanksgiving without them felt unfamiliar but not heartbreaking with people who valued and respected me. I felt more joy than I had in years. No walking on eggshells, no judgment or cold looks, no undercurrent of disapproval. In early December, I saw Ryan at the supermarket, our first sighting since court. He saw me, his expression went from startled to angry. I readied for confrontation, but he silently turned around and left his silent retreat. Said everything, our old family dynamic was broken and could not be fixed later that month. Holiday cards arrived from cousins and relatives who had once backed my parents. The messages were polite and somewhat warm, implying that maybe family opinion was shifting as more people began to see what really happened. Aunt Jessica asked me to join her New Year's celebration and gently said my parents wouldn't be there. They've cut off too many people, she added. You're not the only one they've hurt. As the new year started, I realized I'd passed through a quiet turning point. The non-stop tension around my family was gone, replaced by sadness at times, but also by deep relief. I didn't need to prove my worth to them anymore, or meet their why standards. I could just exist. However I was thriving, or not flawless or messy, without fearing judgment or withdrawn affection. One night I was flipping through old pictures and realized I could see family images without the stab of pain they used. To bring, I could hold both the happy moments and the harmful dynamics that had always been just beneath the smiles. It's kind of like mourning someone who's still around, I told Dr. Levine. I'm grieving the idea of the parents I thought I had, and accepting who they truly were. She nodded. That's a meaningful realization. It gives space to feel everything honestly without trying to erase any part of it. Come spring, I cautiously stepped back into dating. I met Jason, a landscape designer, through friends. and we hit it off. When I finally told him about my family's history, he just listened in past relationships. I had downplayed my parents' toxic behavior, but this time, I told the full truth. Family can be messy, he said gently. I think you've handled it well. His response was calm, not awkward. No, pushing for reconciliation, just quiet understanding. For the first time, I felt I didn't have to filter my story to be loved. I could just be open about what I'd been through and where I stood. As the 1-year mark of that pivotal Sunday approached, I reflected on all the changes. Since then, my blood relatives were mostly absent, but I had found a new clarity, strength, and real relationships. I reclaimed my house, and also my dignity and inner worth. The last part of my healing came through a letter. I wrote but never sent a letter to my parents summing up what I had come to realize about our bond. I didn't write it for their sake, but for mine. It helped me put into words the boundaries I now held, and the wisdom I had gained. I now see that real family helps you grow, not control you. I wrote, they protect your space, not trample over it. They cheer you on instead of competing with you. I deserved more than you were willing to give, and I found it with others after I finished the letter. I read it out loud. Each word rang true inside me. Then I put it in a box with old pictures and keepsakes, not to erase, but to mark that chapter as finished while I started new ones. I had lived through deep betrayal and come out stronger, braver, and more sure of myself. The house keys they once demanded that awful evening had grown into a metaphor. I was the one in charge of my life now, and I'd never again hand that control to anyone who couldn't honor it. A full year after that chaotic dinner, I threw a housewarming party to celebrate the completed renovation. The kitchen now had the open layout my brother once suggested, but it was all my design quartz counters and cabinets chosen by me. The living area was redone in calming sage tones, and new wood floors stretched across the house. Each upgrade was a way to take back my space and reshape it into something healing. Stephanie came early to help and brought a tiny ornament shaped like a house engraved with Amanda's haven. A full year, she said, placing it on a tall potted plant near the door. How are you feeling? After thinking a moment, I said, lighter, like I let go of a weight I'd been dragging forever. The guests included co-workers, support group friends, Aunt Jessica, and Barbara, who had become more than just my lawyer. The house buzzed with joy and conversation. So unlike the cold gatherings I grew up with, healing hadn't been easy or perfect. I still had days when the grief would catch me off guard. Small things. Could do it like an old card that said, "Love always, Mom and Dad," or a song from family trips long ago, even driving past their old street sometimes. But those things didn't undo me anymore. I had gained strategies to face the pain without letting it control me. Dr. Levine had guided me in creating firm boundaries across all areas of life. I came to see red flags in both work and personal relationships and learned to speak up. Instead of tolerating behavior that felt wrong or draining those who truly belonged in my life, honored those boundaries, those who didn't fade it out over time. My promotion to Director of Client Services brought fresh challenges and new energy. I began mentoring junior staff, especially those feeling pressure from home or struggling with balance. My history gave me insight and compassion that made me a better mentor and leader. You've inspired me to talk to my parents about my job. Emily, a young consultant, shared during a check-in, knowing you've succeeded despite everything gives me courage. While I never explained the full truth about my family at work, the general picture of my situation became known, and others began opening up about similar pasts. What I once viewed as something shameful turned into a point of empathy and connection. The support group I had joined eventually invited me to help facilitate bi-weekly sessions. I would sit in a circle with others who were learning how to navigate estrangement. We shared ways of surviving holidays, handling relatives in common, and coping with all the tangled emotions of cutting off parents or siblings. Estrangement from family doesn't mean you failed. I often reminded the group it can be the most healthy and loving act when the cost of reunion is your well-being. 3 months after that joyful housewarming, I ran into my brother at the paint aisle of the hardware store. His eyes locked on mine, and his expression turned sharp rather than turning away. Like before, he stormed toward me, with thinly veiled, "Rage Mom's not well," he announced bluntly. Like I wouldn't care, the sting of his word. Scut deep. but I stayed calm. "I'm sorry to hear that. I said I hope she's being cared for. Now you care? After tearing everything apart?" His voice rose and drew. Glances from people nearby. "Ryan, this isn't the moment for this talk," I said. "There's no moment because you picked a courtroom over your family." He spat before walking off and leaving his cart abandoned among the paint samples. I left the store unsettled, but strangely affirmed Ryan hadn't changed and still didn't grasp the damage Mom and Dad had tried to inflict in his mind. I remained. The trader who ruined everything thanks to Aunt Jessica. I occasionally heard updates about our parents. They were in deeper financial strain than before they'd refinanced their home, and were now considering selling. Dad had taken part-time work. After retiring, and Mom vented often about how unfair life was to whoever would listen. "They still think you're at fault." Jessica told me plainly in their eyes, "They raised you, so your success is their retirement plan." Rather than gloat, I felt a tangled sadness alongside a sense of release. Sad for the relationship that never got to grow, but free of the burden to fix their money messes. My approach to finances had shifted too, working with a financial counselor, and Dr. Levine helped me see my unhealthy scripts about money, how I had linked it with love, believed I had to hide success, and felt guilty for protecting my income from family demands. "Money is just a resource," my financial therapist repeated. "It's not your identity and not something you're obligated to hand over because others expect it." That helped me become more intentional about money. I designed a clear giving plan, supporting causes I valued rather than reacting to guilt trips or subtle pressure. I made structured choices around helping friends in need, making sure my giving came from generosity, not shame. But the most powerful shift was my deepening connection with Jason. Unlike former partners who saw my family history as too much or pushed reconciliation for the sake of unity, Jason didn't question my lines. "Your family story is part of you," he said during a long walk one evening. "But it's not your whole story. You've made something meaningful from something painful." His own family was close-knit and also respected personal space, a reality so unlike mine it felt strange. The first holiday I spent with them, I braced for tension, passive digs, or emotional drama, but it never came. Instead, there was warmth, directness, and affection. People disagreed sometimes, but with grace and respect, is your family really always like this? I asked Jason after dinner. "Like what?" "So calm and healthy, no guilt, no yelling, no games. No one vanished mid-meal or hinted at being disappointed." He smiled and then noticed I was serious. "This is what family should be. Amanda, loving but not demanding. Supportive but not intrusive." As our bond grew deeper, I started imagining a family of my own one day, a vision I used to push away out of fear that I'd repeat the pain I'd known, but therapy helped me see that awareness is the key to doing things differently. I could build new patterns and lead with intention. On the day I'd received the permanent restraining order a year earlier, I wrote a letter to myself. It was a note of acknowledgement, not a victory dance, but a tribute to the strength that had seen me through. "You made it through hell," I wrote. "You defended what mattered, not just a house, but your sense of self, your freedom to choose. You realized that family is built on respect and love, not blood alone. You saw that forgiveness doesn't mean reunion, and boundaries aren't cruelty. They're care in action. Most of all, you reclaimed your voice and stood by it." I folded the letter and tucked it in the drawer beside my bed, to read on nights when guilt crept in, or the weight of doubt threatened my peace. Through this whole process, I discovered what ownership really meant. It wasn't just the deed to my home, but ownership of my values, my time, my right to decide who had access to my inner world. My parents had tried to take everything, had built, but in doing so, they reminded me that the final say belonged to me. Forgiveness came up often in therapy and in group talks. Many assumed it was required for healing, but I had reached a softer understanding. I had stopped harboring bitterness or hate that would poison my spirit, but I couldn't offer the kind of forgiveness that ignored harm or reopened wounds. Maybe forgiveness and reconciliation are two different things. Dr. Levine once told me, "You can release the pain without resuming a bond that hurt you." That landed deeply. I could let them go in peace. I could hope they healed and still hold firm to my boundary. I could honor the love they once showed while not using it to excuse the harm they later caused. I turned toward living in alignment each relationship, each goal, each yes had to match what I truly believed, not what I feared losing. This clarity gave me confidence in decisions that might have once made me nervous about approval as the year wound down. I reflected on what the betrayal had ultimately given me in trying to take from me. My parents had accidentally handed me something sacred, the freedom to define family in my own way, to find and build bonds based on truth, not pressure, in the quiet of my home, a place now full of light and comfort. I wondered how I could offer hope to others. Facing similar battles, the group had been one outlet, but I felt a nudge to do more to turn my lived experience into something that might guide others through their storms. What does family mean to you? Is it blood and legal links, or the bonds forged in respect and care? How can we balance the hunger to belong with the right to protect ourselves? There are no easy answers, but asking these questions has led me into a truer life than I believed was possible. And as I sit to share this journey with you, I wonder what paths you've taken with family and pain have you had to walk away for your own peace. What gave you strength when it felt impossible? Tell your story in the comments. And if this message resonated, please like and subscribe to follow more stories of growth and healing. Wherever you are on your path, I hope you know this. You deserve to be seen, heard, and held in love without condition.